We are live. Let me just check it once. So it's gonna start out with me rubbing my eyes. Come on, give me a sec. I just want to check if the sound is coming. I think it is. You know what? Yeah, let's. Alright. Okay, it's working. The sound is working. We don't need to test it anymore. We can just start here. We are here reading the second Sally. Staying slow lamps, the Cyberiad, and the chapter's name is the second Sally. Are the tremendous success of their application of the gargantuous effect gave both constructors such an appetite for adventure that they resolved to sally forth once again to parts unknown. Unfortunately, they were quite unable to decide on a destination. Troll, given to tropical climates, had his heart set on Scaldania, the land of the flaming flamingos, while Clopacius, of a somewhat cooler disposition, was equally determined to visit the intergalactic cold pole and a bleak continent adrift among frozen stars. The friends were about to part company for good when Troll suddenly had an idea. Wait, he said, we can advertise our services, then take the best offer. Ridiculous, snorted Clopacius. How are you going to advertise? In a newspaper? Do you have any idea how long it takes a newspaper to reach the nearest planet? You'll be dead and buried before the first offer comes in. But Troll gave a knowing smile and revealed his plan, which Clopacius begrudgingly had to admit was ingenious, and so they set to work. All the necessary equipment quickly thrown together, they gathered up the local stars and arranged them in a great sign, a sign that would be visible at truly incalculable distances. Only blue giants were used for the first word, to get the cosmic reader's attention, and lesser stellar material made up the others. The advertisement read, two distinguished constructors seek employment commensurate with their skill and above all lucrative, hence preferably at the court of a well-heeled king, should have his own kingdom. Terms to be arranged. It was not long before, one bright morning, a most marvelous craft aligned on their front lawn. It gleamed in the sun, all inlaid with mother of pearl, had 3 legs intricately carved and 6 additional supports of solid gold. Quite useless since they didn't even reach the ground, but then the builders obviously had more wealth than they knew what to do with. Down a magnificent staircase with billowing fountains on either side, there came a figure of stately being with a retinue of 6-legged machines. Some of these massaged him, some supported him, and fanned him. But the smallest flew above his august brow and sprayed it with eau de cologne from an atomizer. This impressive emissary greeted the constructors on behalf of his lord and sovereign, King Cruel, who wished to engage them. What sort of work is it? Asked Troll, interested. The details, gentle sirs, you shall learn at the proper time, was his reply. He was dressed in gallica skins of gold, mink-tufted buskins, sequined earmuffs, and a robe of most unusual cut. Instead of pockets, it had little shelves full of mints and marzipan. The tiny mechanical flyers also buzzed about his person, and these he brushed away whenever they grew too bold. For now, he went on, I can only say that his boundless cruelty is a great enthusiast of the hunt, a fearless and peerless conqueror of every sort of galactic fauna, and verily his prowess has reached such heights that now the fiercest predators are no longer worthy of game for him. And herein lies our misfortune, for he craves excitement, danger, thrills, which is why. Of course, said Troll, he wants us to construct a new model of beast, something wild and rapacious enough to present a challenge. You are a worthy constructor, indeed quick, said the king's emissary. Then it is agreed? Cleopatra began to question the emissary more closely on certain practical matters, but after the king's generosity was glowingly described and sufficiently elaborated upon, they hurriedly packed their things and a few books, ran up the magnificent staircase, hopped on board, and were immediately lifted with a great roar and burst of flame that blackened the ship's gold legs into the interstellar night. As they traveled, the emissary briefed the constructors on the laws and customs prevailing in the kingdom of Cruel, told them of the monarch's nature, as broad and open as a level city, and of his manly purses, and much more, so that by the time the ship landed they could speak the language like natives. First, they were taken to a splendid villa situated on a mountainside above the village. This is where they were to stay. Then, after a brief rest, the king sent a carriage with them, a carriage drawn by 6 fire-breathing monsters. These were muzzled with fire screens and smoke fillers, had their wings clipped to keep them on the ground, and long spiked tails and 6 paws apiece with iron claws that cut deep pits in the road wherever they went. As soon as the monsters saw the constructors, the entire team set up a howl, belching fire and brimstone, and strained to get at them. Coachmen in asbestos armor and the king's huntsmen with hoses and pumps had to fall upon the creatures and beat them into submission with laser and mazer clubs before Troll and Kapashas could safely step into the plush carriage, which they did without a word. The carriage tore off at breakneck speed, or to use an appropriate metaphor, like a bat out of hell. You know, Troll whispered in Klapash's ear as they rushed along, knocking down everything in their path and leaving a long trail of sulfur smoke behind them. I have a feeling that this king won't settle just for just anything. I mean, if he has coursers like these. But level-headed Klapashas said nothing. Houses now flashed by, walls of diamonds and sapphires and silver, while the dragons thundered and hissed and the drivers cursed and shouted. At last, a colossal portcullis loomed up ahead, open, and their carriage whirled into the courtyard, careening so sharply that the flower beds all shriveled up, then ground to a stop before a castle, black as night. Welcomed by an unusually dismal fanfare and quite overwhelmed by the massive stairs, balustrades, and especially the stone giants that guarded the main gate, Troll and Klapashas, flanked by a formidable escort, entered the mighty castle. King Troll awaited them in an enormous hall, the shape of a skull, a vast and vaulted cave of beaten silver. There was a gaping pit in the floor, the skull's forum and magnum, and beyond it stood the throne, over which 2 streams of light crossed like swords. They came from high windows fixed in the skull's eye sockets, and with panes specially tinted to give everything a harsh and infernal aspect. The constructors now saw Cruel himself, too impatient to sit still on his throne. This monarch paced from wall to wall across the silver floor, his steps booming in that cadaverous cavern, and as he spoke, he emphasized his words with such sudden stabs of the hand that the air whistled. "Welcome, constructors," he said, skewering them both with his eyes. "As you have no doubt learned from Blood, Protozoa, master of the royal hunt, I want you to build me new and better kinds of game. Now, I'm not interested, you understand, in any mountain steel on 100 odd threads. That's a job for heavy artillery, not for me. My quarry must be strong and ferocious, but swift and nimble too, and above all cunning and full of wile, so that I will have to call upon my hunter's art to drive it to the ground. It must be a highly intelligent beast, all there is to know of covering tracks, doubling back, hiding in shadows, and lying in wait, for such is my will." "Forgive me, your highness," said Klapashas with a grateful bow, "but if you do your highness bidding too well, might not this put the royal life and limb in some peril?" The king roared with such laughter that a couple of crystal pennants fell off a chandelier and shattered at the feet of the trembling constructors. "Have no fear of that, noble constructors," he said with a grim smile. "You're not the first and you will not be the last to expect. Know that I'm a just but most exacting ruler. Too often have assorted knaves, flatterers, and fakes attempted to deceive me. Too often, I say, have they posed as distinguished hunting engineers solely to empty my coffers and fill their sacks with gems and precious stones, leaving me in return with a few paltry scarecrows that fall apart at the first touch. Too often has this happened for me to not take appropriate measures. For 12 years now, any constructor who fails to meet my demands, who promises more than he is able to deliver, indeed receives his reward, but his whole reward and all into yon deep well, unless he be game enough to serve as the quarry himself. In which case, gentlemen, I use no weapon but these 2 bare hands." Fucking hell. And have there been many such imposters? Asked Troll in a weak voice. "Many? That's difficult to say. I only know that no one yet has satisfied me, and the scream of terror they invariably give as they plummet to the bottom doesn't last quite as long as it used to be. The remains no doubt have begun to mount, but rest assured, gentlemen, there's room enough still for you." A deathly silence followed these dire words, and the 2 friends couldn't help but look in the direction of that dark and ominous hole. The killer resumed his relentless pacing, his boots striking the floor like sledgehammers in an echo chamber. "But with your highness' permission, that is, we haven't yet drawn up the contract," stammered Troll. "Couldn't we have an hour or 2 to think it over, weigh carefully that your highness has been so gracious as to tell us, and then of course we can decide whether to accept your generous offer, or on the other hand—" "Ha!" laughed the king like a thunderclap. Or on the other hand, good to go home? I'm afraid not, gentlemen. The moment you set foot on board the Fernanda, you accepted my offer. If every constructor who came here could leave whenever he pleased, why? I had to wait forever for my finest hopes to realize. Now you must stay and build me a beast to hunt. I give you 12 days and now you may go. Whatever pleasure you desire in the meantime is yours. You have but to ask the servants I have given you, and nothing will be denied to you. In 12 days then. With your highness' permission, you can keep the pleasures, but well, would it be at all possible for us to have a look at the hunting trophies your highness must have collected as a result to speak so to speak of the efforts of our predecessors? But of course, said the king indulgently and clapped his hands with such force that sparks flew and danced across the silver walls. The gust of air from those powerful palms cooled even more our constructor's ardor for adventure. 6 guards in white and gold appeared and conducted them down a corridor that twisted and wound like the gullet of a giant serpent. Finally, to their great relief, it led out into a large open garden. There, on remarkably well-trimmed lawn, stood the hunting trophies of King Crow. Nearest at hand was a saber-toothed colossus, practically cut in two in spite of the heavy mail and plate armor that was to have protected its trunk. The hind legs, disproportionately large, lay upon the grass alongside the tail, which ended in a firearm with its magazine half empty, a clear sign that the creature had not fallen to the king without a fight. A yellow strip of cloth hanging from its open jaws also testified to this, for Troll recognized in its the breeches worn by the king's huntsman. Next was another prone monstrosity, a dragon with a multitude of tiny wings, all singed and blackened by enemy fire. Its circus had spilled out molten and then congealed in a copper porcelain puddle. Farther on stood another creature, the pillar-like legs spread wide. A gentle breeze soughed softly through his flanks. And there were wrecks on wheels and wrecks on treads, some with claws and some with cannon, all sundered to the magnetic core, and tank turtles with squashed turrets and mutilated military millipedes and other oddities broken and battle-scarred, some equipped with auxiliary brains burnt out, some perched on telescoping stills dislocated, and there were little vicious biting things strewn about. These had been made to attack in great swarms, then regroup in a spear bristling with gun muzzles and bayonets. A clever idea, but it saved neither them nor their creators. Down this aisle of devastation walked Troll and Klopashes, pale, silent, looking as if they were on their way to a funeral instead of to another brilliant session of vigorous invention. They came at last to the end of that dreadful gallery of Cruel's triumphs and stepped into the carriage that was waiting for them at the gate. That dragon team which sped them back to their lodgings seemed less terrible now. Just as soon as they were alone in their sumptuously appointed green and crimson drawing room, before a table heaped high with frozen drinks and rare delicacies, Troll broke into a volley of imprecations. He reviled Capacious for heedlessly accepting the offer made to the master of the royal hunt, thereby bringing down misfortune on their heads, when they easily could have stayed home and rested on their laurels. Capacious said nothing, waiting patiently for Troll's desperate race to expend itself, and when it finally did, Troll had collapsed into a lavish mother of pearl chaste tongue and buried his face in his hands. He said, "Well, we'd better get to work." These words did much to revive Troll, and the two constructors immediately began to consider the various possibilities, drawing on the knowledge of the deepest and darkest secrets of the arcane art of cybernetic generation. First of all, they agreed that the victory lay neither in the armor nor in the strength of the monster to be built, but entirely in its program. In other words, in an algorithm of demoniacal derivation. It must be a truly diabolical creature, a thing of absolute evil, they said, and though they had as yet no clear idea of what or how, this observation lifted their spirits considerably. Such was their enthusiasm by the time they sat down to draft the piece that they worked all night, all day, and through a second night and day before taking a break for dinner. And as the laden jars were passed about, so sure were they of success that they winked and smirked, but only when the servants were looking, since they suspected them of being the king's spies. So the constructors said nothing of the work, but praised the mulled electrolyte which the waiters brought in, tailcoats flapping, in beakers of the finest cut crystal. Only after the repast, when they had wandered out on the veranda overlooking the village with its white steeples and domes catching the last golden rays of the setting sun, only then did Troll turn to Klopashes and say, "We're not out of the woods yet, you know." "How do you mean?" asked Klopashes in a cautious whisper. "There's one difficulty. You see, if the king defeats our mechanical beast, he'll undoubtedly have us thrown into that pit, for we won't have done his bidding. If, on the other hand, the beast... You see what I mean? If the beast isn't defeated, No, if the beast defeats him, dear colleague, if that happens, the king's successor may not let us off so easily. You don't think we'd have to answer for that, do you? As a rule, heirs to the throne are only too happy to see it vacated. True, but this will be his son, and whether the son punishes out of filial devotion or because he thinks the royal code expects it of him, it'll make a little difference as far as we're concerned. That never occurred to me, muttered Topachus. You're quite right. The prospects aren't encouraging. Have you thought of a way out of this dilemma? Well, we might make the beast multi-mortal. Picture this, the king slays it, it falls, then gets up again, resurrected, the king chases it again, slays it again, and so on until he gets sick and tired of the whole thing. That he won't like, said Kapashas after some thought. And anyway, how would you design such a beast? Oh, I don't know, we can make it without any vital organs. The king chops the beast into little pieces, but the pieces grow back together. How? Use a field, magnetic if you like. How do you operate it? Remote control perhaps? Too risky, said Kapashas. How do you know the king won't have us locked up in some dungeon while the hunt's in progress? Our poor predecessors were no fools, and look how they ended up. One of them, I'm sure, thought of remote control, yet it failed. No, we can't expect it to maintain communication with the beast during the battle. Then why not use a satellite, says the said troll? We could install automatic controls. Satellite indeed, snarled Kapashas. And how are you going to build it, let alone put it in orbit? There are no miracles in our profession, troll. We'll have to hide the controls some other way. But where can we hide the controls when they watch our every step? You've seen how the servants skulk about, sticking their noses into everything. We'd never be able to leave the premises ourselves, and certainly not smuggle out such a large piece of equipment. It's impossible. Calm down, said prudent Kapashas, looking over his shoulder. Perhaps we don't need such equipment in the first place. Something has to operate the beast, and if that something is an electronic brain and we're inside, the king will smash it into a pulp before we can say goodbye. They were silent. Night had fallen and the village lights below were flickering on one by one. Suddenly, Troll said, "Listen, here's an idea. We only pretend to build a beast, but in reality we build a ship to escape on. We give it ears, a tail, paws, so no one will suspect, and they can be easily jettisoned on takeoff. What do you think of that? We get off scot-free and thumb our noses at the king. And if the king has planted a real constructor among our servants, which is not unlikely, then it's all over and into the pit with us. Besides, running away, no, it just doesn't suit me. It's him or a Stroll, you can't get around it." "Yes, I suppose a spy could be constructed too," said Stroll with a sigh. What then can we do in the name of the great comet? How about a photoelectric phantom? You mean a mirage? Have the king hunt a mirage? No thanks. After an hour or two of that, he'd come straight here and make phantoms of us. Again they were silent. Finally Troll said, "The only way out of our difficulty, as far as I can see, is to have the beast dash the king, and then you don't have to say another word. Yes, that's not at all a bad idea. That's the worst place where the ammunition could have... Oh, shoot, what is this? Abduct. Okay. Abduct the king, and then you don't have to say another word. Yes, that's not at all a bad idea. Then for the ransom, we haven't you noticed, oh boy, that the Orioles here are a deeper orange than on Maryland 4? Concluded Kapashas, for just then some servants were bringing silver lamps out on the veranda. "There's a problem though," he said. He continued when they were alone again. "Assuming the beast can do what you say, how will we be able to negotiate with the prisoner if we're sitting in a dungeon ourselves?" "You have a point there," said Troll. "We'll have to figure some way around that. The main thing, however, is the algorithm. Any child knows that. What's a beast without an algorithm?" So they rolled up their sleeves and sat down to experiment by simulation, that is, mathematically and all on paper. And the mathematical models of King Cruel and the Beast did such fierce battle across the equation-covered table that the constructor's pencils kept snapping. Furious, the Beast writhed and wriggled its iterated integrals beneath the King's polynomial blows, collapsed into an infinite series of indeterminate terms, then got back up by raising itself to the nth power. But the king so belabored it with differentials and partial derivatives that its Fourier coefficients all cancelled out. See Riemann's lemma. And in the ensuing confusion, the constructors completely lost sight of both king and the beast. So they took a break, stretched their legs, had a swig from the laden jug to bolster their strength, then went back to work and tried again from the beginning, this time unleashing their entire arsenal of tensor matrices and grand canonical ensembles, attacking the problem with such fervor that the very paper began to smoke. The king rushed forward with all his cruel coordinates and mean values, stumbled into the dark forest of roots and logarithms, had to backtrack, then encountered the beast on a field of irrational numbers and smote it so grievously that it fell 2 decimal places and lost an epsilon, but the beast slid around an asymptote and hid in an and n-dimensional orthogonal phase space underwent expansion and came out fuming factorially and fell upon the king and hurt him passing sore. But the king, nothing daunted, put on his Markov chain mail and all his impervious parameters, took increment delta to infinity and dealt the beast a truly Boolean blow, sent it wheeling through an x-axis and several brackets. But the beast, prepared for this, lowered its horns and wham! The pencils flew like mad through transcendental functions and double eigen transformations, and when at last the beast closed in and the king was down and out for the count, the constructors jumped up, danced the jay, laughed and sang as the tore all papers to shreds, much to the amazement of the spies perched in the chandelier pushed in vain. For they were uninitiated into the niceties of higher mathematics and consequently had no idea why Troll and Cleopatra were now shouting over and over, "Hurrah, victory!" That was such an amazing paragraph. This guy's amazing, man. Stanislaw Lem. Oh my god. Well, after midnight, the Leiden jug. I need to take a fucking break, man. I hear something. It's fine. Well, after midnight, the Leiden jug from its constructors, the constructors had on occasion to refresh themselves in the course of their labors, was quietly taken to the headquarters of the king's secret police, where its false bottom was open and a tiny tape recorder removed. This the experts switched on and listened to eagerly, but the rising sun found them totally unenlightened and looking haggard. One voice, for example, would say, "Well, is the king ready? Right. Where'd you put him? Over there? Good. Now, hold on. You have to keep the feet together. Not yours, idiot. The king's. All right, now. Ready? 1, 2, find the derivative. Quick. What do you get? Pi. And the beast? Under the radical sign. But look, the king's still standing. Still standing, eh? Factor both sides, divide by 2, throw in a few imaginary numbers. Good. Now, change variables and subtract. Troll. What on earth are you doing? The beast, not the king. The beast. That's right. Good. Perfect. Now, transform, approximate, and solve for n. X, do you have it? I have it, Cleopatra. Look at the king now. There was a pause, then a burst of wild laughter. That same morning, as all experts and high officials of secret police shook their heads, bleary-eyed after a sleepless night, the constructors asked for quartz, vanadium, steel, copper, platinum, rhinestones, dysprosium, yttrium, thulium, also cerium and germanium, and most of the other elements that make up the universe, plus a variety of machines and qualified technicians, not to mention a wide assortment of spies. For so insolent had the constructors become that on the triplicate requisition form they boldly wrote, "Also kindly send agents of various cuts and stripes at the discretion and with approval of the proper authorities." The next day they asked for sawdust and a large velvet curtain on a stand and a cluster of little glass bells in the center and a large tassel at each of its 4 corners. Everything, even down to the littlest glass bell, was specified with the utmost precision. The king scowled when he heard this request, but ordered them to be carried out to the letter, for he had given his royal word. The constructors were thus granted all that they wished. All that they wished grew more and more outlandish. For instance, in the files of the secret police and the code number something was a copy of requisition for 3 tailors' mannequins, as well as 6 full police uniforms complete with sash, sidearms, shackle, plume, and handcuffs. Also, all available back issues of the magazine. The patriotic policeman, yearbooks, and supplements included. Under comments, the constructors had guaranteed the return of all items listed above within 24 hours of delivery and in perfect condition. In another classified section of the police archives was a copy of a letter from Cleopatra in which he demanded the immediate shipment of 1. A life-size doll representing the Postmaster General in full regalia, and 2. A light gig painted green with a kerosene lamp on the left and a sky blue sign on the back that said "Think." The doll and gig proved too much for the chief of police. He had to be taken away for a much-needed rest. During the next 3 days, the constructors asked only for barrels of red castor oil, and after that, nothing. From then on, they worked in the basement of the palace, hammering away and singing space chants. And at nights, blue lights came flashing from the basement windows and gave weird shapes to the trees in the garden outside. Troll and Cleopatra, with their many helpers, bustled about amid arcs and sparks, now and then looking up to see faces pressed against the glass. Something is happening, man. The servants, as if out of idle curiosity, were photographing their entire move. On one evening, when the weary constructors had finally dragged themselves off to bed, the components of the apparatus they had been working on were quickly transported by unmarked balloon to police headquarters and assembled by 18 of the finest cyberneticians in the land who had been deputized and duly sworn in for that very purpose, whereupon a great tin mouse ran out from underneath their hands, blowing soap bubbles and dropping a thin trail of chalk dust from under its tail, which fell as it danced this way and that across the table. What, don't you love us anymore? Never before in the kingdom's history did chiefs of police had to be replaced with such speed and regularity. Their uniforms, the doll, the green gig, even the sawdust, everything which the constructors returned exactly as promised was thoroughly examined under an electron microscope. But except for a minuscule card in the sawdust which read just sawdust, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Then individual atoms of the uniforms and gig were thoroughly searched with equal lack of success. At last the day came when the work was completed. A huge vehicle on 300 wheels looking something like a refrigerator was drawn up to the main entrance and opened in the presence of the witnesses. An official strolling capacious brought out a curtain, the one with the tassels and bells, and placed it carefully inside, in the middle of the floor. Then they got in themselves, closed the door, did something, then went and got various containers from the basement, cans of chemicals, all sorts of finely ground powders, grey, silver, white, yellow, green, and sprinkled them under and around the curtain, then stepped out and had the vehicle closed and locked, consulted their watches and together counted out 14 and a half seconds, at which time, much to everyone's surprise, since the vehicle was stationary and there could be no question of a breeze inside, the glass bells tinkled. The constructors exchanged a wink and said, "You can take it now." What is this? The rest of the day they spent blowing, how big is this fucking thing? Oh, it's really big. How far have we come? It's been 27 minutes, it's fine. Alright, the rest of the day they spent blowing soap bubbles from the veranda. That evening, Lord Protozar, master of the royal hunt, came with an escort and politely but firmly informed them that they were to go with him at once to an assigned place. They were Where's the fucking sound coming from? Anyway, I don't mind that. We are having a great time here. Reading this, and let's continue doing that. They were required to leave all their possessions behind, even their clothes. In exchange, they were given rags, then put in irons. The guards and police dignitaries present were astounded by their perfect sang-froid. Instead of demanding justice or trembling with fear, Troll giggled as the shackles were being hammered on, saying he was ticklish. And when the constructors were thrown into a dark and dismal dungeon, they promptly struck up a rousing chorus of "Sing Sweet Software." Meanwhile, mighty Cruel rode forth from the village on his mighty hunting chariot, surrounded by all his retinue and followed by a long and winding train of riders and machines that included not only the traditional catapult and cannon, but enormous laser guns and beta-ray bazookas and a tar thrower guaranteed to immobilize anything that walked, swam, flew, or rolled along. And so this grand procession wended its way to the royal game preserve, and many jokes were made, and boasts, and haughty toasts, and no one gave a thought to the true constructors, except perhaps to remark that those fools were in a pretty pickle now. But when the silver trumpets announced His Majesty's approach, one could see a huge vehicle refrigerator coming up in the opposite direction. Its door flung open, and for one brief moment there gaped the black maw of what appeared to be some sort of field gun. Next there was a boom, a puff of yellow smoke, and something came rocketing out, a form as blurry as a tornado, and with the general consistency of a sandstorm. It arced through the air so fast that no one really got a good look at it anyway. Whatever it was flew 100 paces or more and landed without a sound. The curtain that had been wrapped around it floated to the earth, glass bills stinking oddly in that perfect silence, and there lay there like a crushed strawberry. Now everyone could see the beast clearly, though it wasn't clear at all, but looked a little like a hill, rather large, fairly long. Its color, much like its surroundings, a clump of dried up weeds. The king's huntsmen unleashed a whole pack of automated hounds, mainly Saint Cybernards and Cyberman pinchers with an occasional high-frequency terrier. These hurled themselves, howling and slavering, at the crouching beast. The beast did not rear back, didn't roar, didn't even breathe. I'm getting a call. I'm getting a call. Just a second, I'm gonna disable audio. Yeah, let's continue. Didn't even breathe fire, but only opened his two eyes wide and reduced half of the pack to ashes in a trice. "Ooh, laser eyed is it?" cried the king. "Hand me my trusty duralumin doublet, my bulletproof buckler, my halberd, and an arquebus." Thus countered and gleaming like a supernova, he rode out upon his fearless, high-fidelity cyber steed, came nigh the beast, and smote it such a mighty blow that the air crackled and his head tumbled neatly to the ground. Though the retinue dutifully highlighted his triumph, the king took no delight in it. Greatly angered, he swore in his heart to devise some special torment for those wretches who dared to call themselves constructors. The beast, however, shook another head out of its severed neck, opened its new eyes wide, and played a withering beam across the king's armor, which, however, was a proof against all manner of electromagnetic radiation. "Well, those two aren't a total loss," said the king to himself, "though this still won't help him." And he recharged his charger and spurred into the fray. This time he swung full at. This is like a fucking epic battle scene. This time he swung full and cleaved the beast in twain. The beast didn't seem to mind. In fact, it positioned itself helpfully beneath the whistling blade and gave a grateful twitch as it fell. And small wonder, the king took another look. The thing was twinned instead of twain. There were two splitting images, each a little smaller than the original, plus a third, a baby beast gamboling between them. That was the head he had cut off earlier. It now had a tail and feet and was doing cartwheels through the weeds. "What next?" thought the king. "Chop it into mice or little worms, a fine way to hunt." And with great ire did he have at it, hewing with might and main until there was no end of little beasts underfoot. But suddenly they all backed off, went into a huddle, and there stood the beast again, good as new and stifling a yawn. Thought the king. "Apparently it has the same kind of stabilization mechanism that, what is his name again? Pumpington, the Pumpington tried to use. Yes, I dealt with him myself for that idiotic trick. Well, we'll just wheel out the antimatter artillery." He picked one of the 6-foot bore, lined it up and loaded it himself, took aim, pulled the string, and sent a perfectly silent and weirdly shimmering shell straight at the beast to blow it into smithereens once and for all. But nothing happened. That is, nothing much. The beast only crashed a little lower, put out its left hand, long and hairy, and gave the king the finger. "Bring out our biggest," roared the king, pretending not to notice, and several hundred peasants pulled up a veritable giant of a cannon, all of 80 gauge, which the king aimed and was just about to fire when all at once the beast leaped. The king lifted his sword to defend himself, but then there was no more beast. Those who saw what happened next said later that they were sure they had taken leave of their senses, for as the beast flew through the air, it underwent a lightning transformation. The great hulk divided up into 3 men in uniform, 3 policemen, who still, aloft, were already prepared to do their duty. The first policeman, a sergeant, got out the handcuffs, maneuvering his legs to keep upright. The second held on to his plumed shako with one hand so it wouldn't blow off, and with the other pulled out a warrant from his breast pocket. The third, apparently a rookie, assumed a horizontal position beneath the feet of the first two to cushion their fall. After which, however, he jumped up and carefully dusted off his uniform. Meanwhile, the first policeman had handcuffed the dumbfounded king, and the second slapped the sword from his hand. Feebly protesting, the suspect was then summarily trotted off the field. The entire hunting procession stood rooted to the spot for a minute or two, then gave a yell and followed in hot pursuit. Snorting cyber steeds had practically caught up with the abductors, and the swords and sabers were unsheathed and raised to strike. But the third policeman bent over, depressed his belly button, and immediately the arms grew into two shafts. The legs coiled up, and sprouting spokes began to turn, while the back formed the seat of a green racing gig to accommodate the other two policemen who were vigorously plying the now harnessed king with a whip to make him run faster. The king obliged and broke into a mad gallop, waving his arms frantically to ward off the blows that descended upon his royal head. But now the huntsmen were gaining again, so the policeman jumped on the king's back, and one slipped down between the shafts, huffed and puffed, and turned into a spinning toy, a dancing whirlwind, which gave wings to the little gig and whizzed it away over hill and dale till it disappeared altogether in a cloud of dust. The king's retinue split up and began a desperate search with Geiger counters and bloodhounds, and a special detachment came running up with shovels and flamethrowers and left no bone unburned in all neighboring cemeteries. An obvious error, occasionally most likely by the trembling hand that hastily telegraphed the order from the observation balloon that had monitored the hunt. Several police divisions rushed here and there, searched the grounds, every bush, every weed, and both X-rays and laboratory samples were diligently taken of everything imaginable. The king's charger was ordered to appear before a special board of inquiry appointed by the prosecutor general. A unit of paratroopers with vacuum cleaners and sieves was dropped on the royal game preserve to sift through every last particle of dust. Finally, the order was issued that anyone resembling a policeman was to be detained and held without bail, which naturally created difficulties. One half the police force, as it turned out, had arrested the other, and vice versa. At dusk, the huntsmen and soldiers returned to village, dazed and bedraggled with the woeful tidings that neither hide nor hair of the king's person was anywhere to be found. By torchlight and in the dead of the night, the chain's constructors were taken before the great chancellor and keeper of the royal seal, who addressed them in the following way. Whereas ye have falsely conspired and purposely plotted against the crown and life of our beloved sovereign and most noble ruler cruel, and therewith dare to raise a treacherous hand and wildly devise his demise, not to mention impersonating an officer, a great aggravation of your crimes, so shall ye be quartered without quarter, impaled and pilloried, disemboweled, buried alive, crucified and burnt at the stake, after which your ashes shall be sent into orbit as a warning and perpetual reminder to all would-be regicides. Amen. Can't you wait a bit? asked Troll. You see, we were expecting a letter. A letter, though most querulous and scurvy knave. Just then the guards made way for the postmaster general himself. Indeed, how could they bar that dignitary's entrance with their poleaxes? The postmaster approached in full regalia, his medals jingling impressively, pulled a letter from a sapphire satchel and handed it to the chancellor, saying, "Mannikin though I be, I come from his majesty," whereupon he disintegrated into a fine powder. The chancellor could scarcely believe his eyes, but quickly recognized that the king's signature impressed there on the purple sealing wax. He opened the letter and read that his majesty was forced to negotiate with the enemy, but the constructors had employed means algorithmic and algebraic to make him captive, and now they would list their demands, all of which the great chancellor had better meet if he ever wished to get his mighty sovereign back in one piece. Signed, Cruel herewith affixes his hand and seal, held prisoner in a cave of unknown location by one pseudo-constabulary beast in 3 uniforms personified. There then rose a great clamor, everyone shouting and asking what it all meant and what were the demands, to which Troll said only, "Our chains, if you please." Blacksmith was summoned to unfetter them, after which Troll said, "We are hungry and dirty. We need a bath, a shave, a massage, refreshment, nothing but the best, plenty of pomp, and a water ballet with fireworks for dessert." The court, of course, was hopping mad, but had to comply in every particular. Only at dawn did the constructors return from their villa, each elegantly pomaded, arrayed, and reclining in a sedan chair borne by footmen, their former informers. They then, being to grant an audience, sat down and presented their demands. Not off the top of their heads, mind you, but from a little notebook they had prepared for the occasion and hidden behind a curtain in their room. The following articles were read. First, a ship of the finest make and model available shall be furnished to carry the constructors home. Second, the said ship shall be laden with various cargo as here specified. Diamonds 4 bushels, gold coin 40 bushels, platinum, palladium, and whatever other ready valuables they happen to think of, 8 bushels of each, and also whatever mementos and tokens from the royal apartments the signatories of this instrument may deem appropriate. Third, until such time as the said ship shall be in readiness for takeoff, every nut and bolt in place, fully loaded and delivered up to the constructors, complete with red carpet, an 80-piece send-off band and children's chorus, an abundance of honors, decorations, and awards, and a wildly cheering crowd. Until then, no king. Fourth, that a formal expression of undying gratitude shall be stamped upon a gold medallion and addressed to the most sublime and radiant constructors, troll and capacious, delight and terror of the universe. And moreover, it shall contain a full account of their victory and be duly signed and notarized by every high and low official in the land. Then said in the richly embellished, this is ridiculous, embellished barrel of the king's favorite cannon, which Lord Protozoar, master of the royal hunt, shall himself and wholly unaided carry on board. No other Protozoar but the one who lured their most sublime and radiant constructors to this planet, thinking to work their painful and ignominious death thereby. Fifth. Oh my god, man. This is overwhelming. This guy's. Fifth, that the aforesaid Protozoar shall accompany them on their return journey as insurance against any sort of double-dealing purser and the like. On board he shall occupy a cage 3 by 3 by 4 feet and shall receive a daily allowance of a humble pie with a filling made of that very same sawdust which their most sublime and radiant constructors foolishness which subsequently taken to police headquarters by unmarked balloon. Sixth and lastly, the king need not crave forgiveness for the most sublime and radiant constructors on bended knee, since he is much too beneath them to deserve notice. In witness whereof the parties have hereon to set their hands and seals this day and year, etc., and so on, by Troll and Kopasha's constructors and the great chancellor, the great chamberlain, the great chief of secret police, Sinestro, the squadron leader, and royal balloon master. Oh yeah, we're almost at the end. Thank God, it's been 41 minutes, man. All the ministers and dignitaries turned blue, but what could they do? They had no choice, so a ship was immediately ordered. But then the constructors unexpectedly showed up after a leisurely breakfast to supervise the work, and nothing suited them. This material, for instance, was no good, and that an engineer was an absolute idiot, and they had to have a revolving magic lantern in the main hall, one with 4 pneumatic widgets and a calibrated cuckoo clock on top, and the natives here didn't know what a widget was, so much the worse for them, considering the king was no doubt most impatient for his release and would deal harshly with anyone who dared to delay it. This remark occasioned a general numbness, a great weakness about the knees, and much trembling, but the work continued apace. Finally, the ship was ready, and the royal stevedores began to stow the cargo in the hold, diamonds, sacks of pearls, so much gold it kept spilling out the hatch. Meanwhile, the police were secretly running all about this countryside, turning everything upside down, much to the amusement of Troll and Kopashas, who didn't mind explaining to a fearful but fascinated audience how it all happened, how they had discarded one idea after another until they hit upon an altogether different kind of beast. Not knowing where or how to place the controls, that is, the brain, so that they would be safe, the constructors had simply made everything brain, enabling the beast to think with its leg or tail or jaws, equipped with wisdom teeth only. But that was just the beginning. The real problem had 2 aspects, algorithmic and psychoanalytic. First, they had to determine what would check the king, catch him flat-footed, so to speak. To this end, they created by nonlinear transmutation a police subset within the beast, since everyone knows that resisting or interfering with an officer who's making an arrest is a cosmic offense and utterly unthinkable. So much for the psychology of it, except that the Postmaster General was utilized here on similar grounds. An official of lower rank might not have made it past the guards, the letter then would not have been delivered, and the constructors would have very literally lost their heads. Moreover, the postmaster mannequin had been given means to bribe the guards, should that have proved necessary. Every eventuality had been anticipated and provided for. Now, as far as the algorithms went, they only had to find the proper domain of bees, closed, bounded, and unbounded, with plenty of laws both associative and distributive in operation, throwing a constable constantly too, some graphs of graphs, quadratic equations, and crime waves. And the thing took over from here once activated by the expedient of writing a document program in Castrol ink, rendering it thereby sufficiently hard to swallow to serve as a red tape generator. We might add here that later on the constructors had an article published in a prominent scientific journal under the title Recursive Beta, Meta Functions in the Special Case of a Bogus Polypolice Transmogrification Composition Conversion on an oscillating harmonic field of glass belts and green gate kerosene lamp on the left to divert attention, solved by beastly incarceration concatenation. Fuck me, man. What the fuck is this? Which was subsequently exploited by the tabloids as the police state rears its ugly head. Obviously, none of the ministers, dignitaries, or huntsmen understood a single word of what was said, but that hardly mattered. The loving subjects of King Cruel knew not whether they should despise his constructors or stand and gape in awe and admiration. Now, all was in readiness and for takeoff. Troll, as stipulated in the agreement, went through the king's private chambers with the Lord Sack and calmly appropriated whatever object he took fancy to. Finally, the carriage arrived and took the victors to the spaceport, where a crowd cheered wildly and a children's chorus sang. Then a charming little girl in local costume curtsied and presented them with a ribbon nosegay, and high-ranking officials took turns to express their undying gratitude, bidding them both a fond farewell, and the band played. Several ladies fainted, and then hush fell over the multitude. Cleopatra had pulled a tooth from his mouth, not an ordinary tooth, but a transmitter receiver, a two-way bicuspid. He threw a tiny switch, and a sandstorm appeared in the horizon, growing and growing, whirling faster and faster until it dropped into an empty space between the ship and the crowd and came to a sudden stop, scattering dust and debris in all directions. Everyone gasped and stepped back. There stood the beast, looking unusually bestial as it flashed its laser eyes and flailed its dragon tail. "The king, if you please," said Cleopatra, but the beast answered, "What the fuck?" "The king, if you please," said Cleopatra, but the beast answered, speaking in a perfectly normal voice, "Not on your life. It's my turn now to make demands." "What? Have you gone mad? You have to obey. It's in the Matrix," shouted Cleopatra. Everyone stared, thunderstruck. Matrix. "Look, pal, I'm not just any beast. I'm algorithmic, heuristic, and sadistic, fully automatic and autocratic. That means undemocratic. And I've got my loads of loops and plenty of feedback, so none of the back talk or I'll clap you in irons. That means in the clink with the king, in a break with the green gig. Get me? "I'll give you feedback," roared Cleopatra, furious. But Troll asked the beast, "What exactly do you want?" And he sneaked around behind Cleopatra and pulled out a special tooth of his own so the beast wouldn't see. "Well, first of all, I want to marry," but they never learned whom in particular the beast had in mind, for Troll threw a tiny switch and quickly chanted, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, input, out you go." The fantastically complex electromagnetic wave system that held the beast's atoms in place now came apart under the influence of those words, and the beast blinked, wiggled its ears, swallowed, tried to pull itself together, but before it could even grit its teeth, there was a hot gust of wind, a strong smell of ozone, then nothing left to pull together, just a little mound of ashes and the king standing in the middle, safe and sound, but in great need of a bath and mortified with tears that he had come to this. "That'll cut you down to size," said Troll, and no one knew whether he meant the beast or the king. In either case, the algorithm had jobs done well. "And now, gentlemen," Troll concluded, "if you'll kindly help the master of the royal hunt into his cage, we can be on our way." Fuck, man, that was fucking epic. Fucking epic. I can't stop grinning at this. Stanislaw Lem, oh my god, man, this man is amazing. I'll stop the stream with that. This was an amazing chapter. This is a fucking amazing book, worth every penny if you buy it. Alright, I'm gonna